Okay, hello. Welcome to the second and final session of our virtual PTG. I think last time went pretty well. We got a lot of stuff covered. Um, we'll just go through the usual way. I see Sean's not here yet, I believe, so we may push his to later. This is a holiday week in the USA, so a lot of people are taking today off. So anyway,
Hey,
good morning, Jay.
Brian.
Yeah, we should do a quick sound check just to make sure everybody's, so you know you're working. So when you do want to say something, we can hear you. So I'll just go through the participants list. So you just say hi and introduce yourself. So Davey, just unmute yourself and say hi or something so we know we can hear you. Or possibly not. Okay, we'll come back around. Eric, good morning.
Morning.
Hey.
This is Eric.
Fernando, hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Yvonne, good morning or afternoon
Hi,
where you
guys.
are. And Jay,
Good morning, afternoon, evening, other.
right. All right, Lucio.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great. Luigi.
Okay.
Hello, a good
Hey.
something today.
Rajat, good morning or evening where you are, I guess.
It's night here.
Night.
Good
Okay,
morning.
sorry. Thanks for staying up late. And Sophia.
No problem.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning. And then Davey. I might not be calling you by your real name. That's your IRC handle.
He also didn't put his name in the Etherpad. I wonder if he's AFK.
Oh, it could be. Okay. All right. Well, he can signal us in the Etherpad if we can't hear him, and he's got something he wants to communicate. All right. Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. Let me scroll up to.
What's your dog going to eat during this one?
Oh, I don't know. So I did find the other end of that. So for people who didn't know, I looked down the middle of the meeting, and my dog was just chewing on this, power cable, and it just had but it had the plug. So luckily, the part that you put into the power was out, so you didn't get electrocuted. But it was just a chewed up wire at the other end, and I couldn't figure out what the heck it was attached to. But I think it's an old power cable from a computer. So I did find the other end was completely chewed up. And then just as a side note, so Tuesday morning around 5:30 a.m., she barfed up a bunch of chewed up, insulation and copper wire. So, yeah, anyway, so hopefully she's upstairs. My wife's doing some cooking to prepare for Thanksgiving. So, she's up there trying to snag some treats, I think. So hopefully she won't chew on anything today. But that was, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully no adventures like that. And she did seem to survive. She's got that kind of cast iron stomach of labs. So, yeah. Okay, great. All right. So V2 removal. So the V2 API has been deprecated for quite a while, which means we can remove it at will, basically, at this point. But what's preventing us is that even though it's been deprecated a long time, not everyone is prepared for this. So we have to sort of do it in stages. So in the Etherpad, there's a link to a review that Sean put up. And all he did was he just removed the V2 from the versions response of the API. So it only has V3 in it now. And it broke some stuff in a really weird way. And like I put there, there's some strange failures, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on, and I didn't really dig into it. So that's one very strange thing, because we're having some test failures on our end, but it seems to be, Rajat, you might want to take a look at that, because it looks like the failure is one of the API reference tests to make sure that the sample and the response are in sync, which I think you did the code for that. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying it's weird because the patch does adjust the sample, but somehow it's still failing. So you might, if you get a chance to take a look at it, you might notice something that would take the rest of us a bit longer to figure out. So that's one weird thing. Now, I went and looked at, so basically what's relying on us, DevStack runs Cinder to do all sorts of stuff. So we need to make sure DevStack can handle this. And then Tempest, of course, also, because those tests run everywhere, and we need to make sure that they can handle v3 only. So I looked at DevStack real quickly, and I put a link on the Etherpad. So it looks like right now DevStack is expecting both v2 and v3 to be available. So that's one of the things we'll have to change. And then when I looked at the Tempest code, it looks like Tempest can handle either v2 or v3. So I think we don't, so we'll see what happens when things actually start running, but it looks like we don't have to worry about that immediately as far as like removing v2 stuff out of Tempest. But it looks like in the base class, it makes a decision. And then I don't know that we're going to have to change anything. They may want to rip out, I mean, the Tempest team might want to remove that possibility, but we can leave that up to them.
Not yet,
Luigi.
because
Okay.
Tempest is used also on the stable branches. So as long as we support the stable branches, then the v2 code should be there. That's the same happened for v1. So
okay.
Yeah, it just has to recognize whether it's enabled or not. And that was when I first started looking at this. That was the main issue: is that Tempest had some assumptions that it was there. DevStack, of course, has some assumptions, and there were various things spread out all over the place where they just assumed the v2 endpoint was there. So that's the tricky part about this. Is I think even after we get these tests to pass, there's probably going to be little things popping up here and there where we find some case where some library or something just assumed that v2 was available.
Okay.
Just a note from my previous experience with removing v1 API, it would be good to get some tests with Glance, Nova, and Horizon. Probably we need to submit some test reviews to that projects and check if v2 API removal affects them or not. Because in the past we break a lot of gates with Glance and Nova.
Okay.
So the issue with the samples is that the template code is removed, but it's not removed from the samples. So we just have to remove it from the API ref also. Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, so if you want to go ahead and, you don't have to do it now, Rajat. In fact, don't do it now so you can pay attention. But yeah, then go ahead and add that to Sean's patch and we'll see what happens. Okay, so then so it looks like our first step is just to get v2 turned off without actually removing anything. And then we'll have the refactoring to get v2 out of there. One complicating thing there is that the v3 API uses a lot of code in the v2. Well, some of the classes rely on v2 classes, and some of them rely on the contributors. Yeah, there's a I forget what it's called exactly, but there's the contributors API stuff. So when OpenStack was started, there was this idea that you'd be able to extend the APIs locally in each installation, and then people quickly realized that would make an interoperability nightmare. So it's sort of been peeled back, but that's the reason for all that OS dash stuff in various responses from the APIs. Those were originally extensions. So we'll have to bring those into the, well, probably move them.
Problem with the contrib part is that until the micro version where that API was modified, it's still going to expect that even with a v3 API. So the contrib part we may not be able to get rid of, but all of that where v2 was just inheriting from, or v3 was inheriting from v2, we should be able to do a lot of cleanup there.
Okay.
So does Horizon also call the v2 code?
We should put them, I think Yvonne may have mentioned Horizon and I didn't put them up here.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that Horizon uses v3 API now and it shouldn't be affected.
Oh, good. All right, great. Okay. Okay. So then I guess the next thing is just sort of actions for people interested in this. But this looks like one of the things, right, that'll fall to the PTL if nobody's real excited about doing this. But I'm kind of excited to get, right, at least the first part done so that we don't rely on having the v2 API present anymore in Ussuri. And then as far as the refactoring under the hood stuff goes, you know, we can take that in steps depending on, you know, who's got bandwidth. So I think it's looking like Rajat may have an answer to Sean's patch problem. So if we get that going, that's cool. I guess I should start writing actions here.
I can make the functional Py3 job passing.
All right. Yeah, I didn't actually. Well, if we have time later, we can talk about this a little bit about how Cinder presents itself in the service catalog. But that's basically what's happening with the dev stack stuff. And then I guess the Tempest stuff, we'll just see what happens once we've got these two things going. And if we're lucky, Tempest will just be able to do the right thing with v3 only. And we'll just see. I guess that's basically it. And then there's no reason to send anything. Well, I guess we can send something to the ML or not. I mean, it's been deprecated for quite a while, so it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Probably would be good to officially announce it.
Okay.
Even though, I agree, it should not be a surprise to anyone at this point.
All right. I'll send out, I'll just send out a general thing saying we're going to do it this cycle, so expect that to disappear. And then people can scream or follow up on the ML as appropriate. Okay. Any general remarks or anything? I think that's okay. Great. Okay. So the next topic is just Sean led the forum session about Cinder volume types. I wasn't at the PTG yet, so I completely missed that one. So I'm kind of interested in seeing what happened there too. So Sean, take it away.
Yeah, so there's a link to the Etherpad there from the forum session. I guess really wasn't too much out of it. A little bit of pulling teeth trying to get people to even give some input on that, which I think is fine, actually. I think that just means that, I think part of the reason we did this session was to see if there were issues with the way we use volume types and things that people want to use them for. And really, for most people, it apparently works just fine. So that part was all right. There were a couple questions that ended up really being most of the discussion. There's one operator that would, for their use case, we added the ability to put an availability zone in extra specs so that the volume type includes the availability zone. He would actually like kind of the reverse of that, I guess, of based on the project, being able to say what availability zones are available to them and have only certain volume types reported for the ones that they can use. That's definitely not an easy thing for us to just put in there. Not like the availability zones, the extra specs. It's a little more complicated. So I think right now they're okay. I think he said that they did some custom scheduling work or something like that to get the functionality that they needed for that. So if anyone has any ideas on that, we can, there's a link towards the bottom right above the attendees. We could probably follow up and get more details.
Well, we had a similar request from a customer that I think Gorka did some investigation on a little while ago, but I'm not sure if we got to the phase of having much of a plan or proposal yet.
Okay. So maybe someone from Red Hat can pursue that. There is a link to Nectar, the Nectar Cloud. They patch it themselves to try to get close to what the functionality is they need there. So at least there's something that's in the works. I think Sam from Nectar actually said that he would try to see if they could propose it upstream. Not sure if that'll happen, but if anyone's interested, that's there. Much more to say about that. The other question that came up was that it's great. Gorka really helped out in this session with pulling up patches. There was a question about the work that Tommy Like had done in marking backends as sold out. That is one thing that we should have a follow-up on. We added the capability to mark a backend as sold out, which means that the backend will continue to work. You can continue to do certain operations on volumes on that backend, but you just can't create new volumes. So not disabling a backend, but just making sure that no new volumes are provisioned there. So there was someone that was looking for that functionality. We had to actually track down the commit that added the functionality. Apparently, we never really followed through on documentation on that. So that is one action if someone has the bandwidth to be able to look at how that actually works and get it documented somewhere. It doesn't appear, at least I couldn't find anywhere that we've actually documented how to use that.
How did we merge that without documentation?
I don't know.
Well, that'll be my failing. I think I was PTL for that one. So
all Jay's fault.
So documentation as a follow-up.
Yeah.
Gork and I approved the patch.
Oh, okay.
So there. Yep. And yeah, the only documentation that was part of it was the release note saying that the functionality was there.
Okay.
Which patch was this?
It's in it's you go to that Etherpad from the forum session.
Oh, it's that commit that's in pink.
Yeah, it's kind of let's see, row 23.
Okay. Gotcha.
Other than that, I think that was about it. There's some questions about retype, RBD, online migration. I think we were able to answer their question.
As I remember, Gore connotated that retype, this RBD, does not use Java-specific migrations, but I didn't check it yet. So Gore has said that during the PTG that retype for RBD use only generic well migration.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think John might have done some work towards that. I seem to remember somebody looking at and trying to get that to work, but I don't know of any changes there. That's still an issue. The note in the Etherpad says we will be working on this cycle to support some of the cases that don't currently work. So I don't know who that was.
Probably it was me. I volunteered to test. I volunteered to test if it works or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be good to just test, make sure that we know what works and what doesn't.
Yes, so I'll do it. I just got my DevStack set up finally.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Other than that, I think that was everything from the session. Good participation, but not a lot of questions and not a lot of issues raised.
Thanks, Sean. That's good.
Thanks for running that, Sean. I'm sorry I couldn't cover it, but it looks like at least we had some productive discussion on it, so that's good.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it looked like a pretty good turnout too.
Yeah, I was looking at the list, so that's good.
All right, great. Any last general comments on that?
Nothing from me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean. All right, next thing is the Ceph iSCSI work. So basically, I mean, Walt was driving this, and now Walt is not driving this. Hopefully he's got something happening. I haven't talked to him recently, but he got caught up in the SUSE stuff. So SUSE is dropping their OpenStack development, although they still support a bit. And so he's been scrambling to try to find something. So anyway.
I can provide an update there.
Okay.
So I talked to him a week and a half ago. He took a position with SAP, working on getting the code that they have patched to their storage functionality for OpenStack upstreamed. So nice. I would expect that we would see him start re-engaging soon.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, so one, it sounds like a good opportunity for him, and two, I think we should see him back in the community here once, he gets settled and stuff.
Oh, that's really good news.
Yeah, he was excited and I was excited, because I was trying to see if there's another opportunity I could pull him in for, but it said he said he was good, so that's good. So we should probably follow up with him as to whether he'll have some bandwidth to keep this going or what will happen.
Okay. Well, let me take that as my action.
Unless there's somebody else that's interested in picking this up now that Red Hat has a whole bunch of developers.
Did we ever document somewhere? Well, I didn't look in that Etherpad link, but did we capture? There were dependencies outside of a Cinder driver
yes.
that needed to be done to actually do this, and I think that was the main roadblock, is waiting for this other work to be done.
Right. So what I could tell from his patches, he's relying on so that this there's the GitHub link to Ceph iSCSI. So he's relying on that thing.
So the big link there was so Walt put together a library that's hosted outside of Cinder as part of kind of a driver interface for this, and that requires some bleeding edge LIO iSCSI kernel module stuff that's tied in with the Linux kernel and Ceph.
He was also doing like a command line for Ceph, right?
Yeah, maybe.
But I thought
the tricky part of it was that I don't think any distributions were actually shipping the Ceph iSCSI stuff yet that was new enough to run this. So there's getting the code together is one thing, but there's still kind of an unsolved puzzle of when would anybody actually be able to ship any of this.
Yeah, so it looks like this Etherpad just captures the work within OpenStack. From what I vaguely remember, we needed changes in Ceph iSCSI. We needed changes in Linux, at some point in Linux. And we needed to work with the various distros to make sure things are packaged. So that's not captured in here.
Right. And he had somewhere a set of instructions for how to manually go through the process. And I had tried to do that and it was painful. So yeah, when we're able to get it working, the concern is how tenuous it will be.
Okay. All right, so I'll contact Walt and ask him to add some things here just so that we have it, the main open issues captured, and then we can see what's going to happen from there. Okay. Is it, just out of curiosity, does anybody here have a consuming interest in Ceph iSCSI driver?
I think we still do, and I know that Ironic in general has an interest. So
yeah, I'm still operating under the assumption that that we at Red Hat eventually will have an interest in this.
Yeah.
Even if we don't at the moment. My guess is that we probably will care about it in the future.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Julia regularly pings me about this and asks if we've done anything more.
Right. Okay. And all right. All right, we can move along to the community goals. Okay, so there are two goals. Everything's kind of late this cycle. I'm not quite sure exactly why. I think the not having a name for you turned out to be a much bigger roadblock than anyone would have thought. But in any case, okay, so the official goal that's been accepted and is in the goal repository is to drop Python 2.7 support. So we're pretty much underway with that. I didn't look at my patch. So I got a patch up that basically does that for Cinder. And once it's approved, I think all the weirdness has been worked out. So I think once that's approved, then I'll just put up similar patches for the other components and away we go. So that should put us in pretty good shape. I mean, like I said the other day, milestone 1 is 2 weeks away. So I think we can be pretty much done by then. The one thing we'll hold off on is removing. So the last step is to change the setup.cfg to require Python 3 to be able to install this stuff. We're going to hold off on doing that because Nova did it and it broke a lot of stuff. And then the other thing is we won't rip out all the Python 2 only requirements that we've got for the same reason. So basically we'll be in the situation where people can, even though we're saying officially we don't support Python 2.7, Cinder is still installable under Python 2.7. But it's anticipated, well, you never know what, right? People are going to discover problems as things go. So tentatively, it's looking like we will officially drop it from OpenStack when, right, Python 2 is officially dropped by the Python community, which I believe is sometime in January. But we'll see. But anyway, those last two steps are basically pretty much nothing. And then there's another patch I didn't put up we'll talk about it later. All right, so anyway, so that's basically it with the Python 2.7 support. The other goal that's still being voted on right now, but it's going to be approved, I think, mainly because they want 2 goals instead of just 1. But it's to have project-specific new contributor and PTL docs. And it doesn't say this explicitly on the goal, but from reading the comments on the review, it's basically up to the PTL to do this in consultation with any former PTLs who are still around. So I'm very lucky in that regard because we got 2 of them right here. So I'll just follow up on that. So basically I'll put up patches and then ping Jay and Sean to review them.
Bye.
Jay just disappeared.
No, I'll help with that. And I think Sean actually already started some of this previously. So it shouldn't be a huge amount of work.
Yeah, I'm not that worried. I mean, it looks like we've got pretty good stuff. And I think the thing will be, they still haven't quite come up with a template. So they want the docs to be consistent so that everybody can find them across projects. But they haven't been real clear yet about exactly what the format's going to be or anything like that. So we'll see what happens with that stuff. So anyway, so that's more of a point of interest for everybody. And if anybody's got a driving interest in this, then let me know. I'll be happy to have you involved in this effort. But anyway, that's basically what's going on there. And then there's already a pre-selected goal for V that Luigi's put together. So it's to migrate all the legacy Zool jobs. And the patch I have there, I think that's your proposal, right, Luigi? And then we, in our repository for Cinder, we've got a patch up that takes the legacy jobs from wherever they're stored. So it drives me crazy when I go look at this stuff because things are all over the place. But anyway, this patch moves the jobs from somewhere and puts them into our repo, so it becomes our problem. So that patch brings them over and also converts them to Python 3. So we're going to be at least set to the point where we have the jobs available when people are ready to work on them. Now, there's some comments on the patch that, and it looks like people are putting comments in now. Good. So anyway, there's some more stuff has to happen before the conversion can go smoothly to turn these into bona fide Zool 3 jobs. So, but I guess the key thing is, right, we're going to be in a decent situation to work with them, and this isn't a thing until V anyway. So there you go. And then the last thing, I think V is going to have this consistent and secure default policies goal that was proposed for you, but then sort of, well, I think there's a problem finding somebody to sort of drive that goal. So anyway, there's a pop-up team that just got organized. So I'm on that. So I'll be paying attention to what's happening with this. I don't know that there's anything in it for us basically at this point other than paying attention to what's happening there and making sure that, it's not going to be problematic for Cinder. But that's basically it. So we're looking pretty good, I think, as far as community goals for you, for sure.
That's good.
Okay, and we're getting, yeah. All right, yeah, Luigi's going to town on this. All right, so we got a lot of information here about what we'll have to be doing. So, yeah, Luigi, I'm so glad you're working with us on this stuff because one of our big initiatives, we want to improve testing, and so it's nice to have somebody who knows how to make this stuff happen working as part of our team. So, great. Okay, so there are a few things. So reviews are welcome. So please take that to heart and feel free to hop in and review things. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Okay. All right. Yeah, any general comments or anything about the community goals? So we're looking good for you, and we're already working on V, so that's pretty amazing. Okay. Next item on the list is the backup service testing. So this is a follow-up from the train mid-cycle. Unfortunately, somebody translated that Etherpad. So that's kind of sucks. So yeah, I don't know the best way. So with the Etherpad, I've occasionally gotten this option where you can like sort of bookmark, but it seems to have disappeared. So I don't know whether they updated the Etherpad and OpenStack and then reverted the change or what happened. But I swear this is the case. I'm pretty sure I did not dream this, although that's possible too. But at some point there was like a little star thing up in the bar, and you could like peg that thing in the time slider so that when you went to the time slider, a star showed up and you could just slide to that and bam, there you were. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, there was an ability to save specific points, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it seems to have disappeared. And the other thing,
I use a bunch of different Etherpads, and they're all slightly different versions, and I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Which one is which?
Well, maybe I may have been looking at a different Etherpad service. Okay.
Okay. Only half of the Etherpad is okay.
Yeah. So I put the exact version you can slide to. The problem is in the time slider view, you don't get the line numbers, which is kind of a drag. The other thing I discovered is you can export the Etherpad, but if you try to, what I tried to do is export. Oh yeah, I was under the impression that you could export a particular version. You can't. You just, when you export, you're getting what's there. So what I've been doing with this one is I've saved the Etherpad like at the end of the last session, and I'll do that again today. But if I try to upload it to the same Etherpad, I get an error because it says the Etherpad I'm trying to upload is out of date with the one that's there. So I'd have to upload it as a newly named Etherpad. So anyway.
We could copy and paste into the current one.
Yeah.
And you lose all of the color formatting and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks like sometimes, yeah, you get the formatting gets completely messed up and everything's in like H2. So it just makes it, so the stuff is not non-recoverable. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. So,
side note, whenever we send out links to recaps and things in Etherpads, maybe we should read-only view. You click on the link in the top right, the little pointy brackets. You can click read-only and then have a read-only link to the Etherpad, and then that one is safe for people to translate.
Okay,
that's good to know.
Yeah, okay, that had come up. I couldn't find that discussion because you had mentioned this in I'm pretty sure it was you, Sean, mentioned this somewhere, either in the Cinder channel or in Infra or somewhere, and I couldn't. Okay. All right, so the thing to do is we give out read-only links. Okay.
Oh, so smart.
Oh, I see. Okay, so, and then the other thing is, because this was the other thing I couldn't remember. So if somebody does want to translate this, then what they should do themselves is click a read-only link, load the read-only link instead, and then translate it. Okay, so that's not, okay.
Yeah, the plugin tools into browsers that do that translation work with the read-only, where it'll show in their translated language, but it won't modify it like it does in the actual Etherpad.
Okay. All right, then I think I'll make sure that now that I know what those instructions are, I will add that. Okay, so let me just put that here. Okay. So the nice thing is, I mean, everything's recoverable, but it's kind of a pain in the butt when you have to do that. So, okay. All right. So anyway, having digressed, basically I just grabbed these from the Etherpad and pasted them here. I didn't have time to go through all this stuff. Interestingly, the link to that we have on line 191 is actually still there. So you can see this particular failure. Yeah, so it's I don't know what to say about this other than that we do have these failures. And I guess the other thing is, I don't know what the other thing is. So I guess basically I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention that we should talk about this. So feel free to jump in. I'm not sure what I was going to say is there've been a lot of failures on patches over the last couple of weeks, but they seem to be distributed like all over the place. So while this is something we should look at, I don't know that it's going to improve our lives in any reasonable way.
Hey, I tried to jump in and hung up my phone instead. I have a vague recollection of one of these fsync IO error things. I think I chased one of them and concluded that it probably was due to running out of space, but I don't remember a lot of context on what that actually meant we should do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about this before when we were in Raleigh.
Yeah.
And your theory was that it was running out of space, but weren't able to prove it.
Yeah, I guess so I put this on here because we were supposed to follow up from the mid-cycle about it. And it's still sort of open. And I haven't dug into this myself, so let me be clear that it's just a general thing that maybe we should follow up on. I guess the thing is, I need to get more familiar with our Tempest tests, because one of the suggestions that probably makes sense would be to dig out these problematic tests and put them in their own job or something, until we can figure out exactly what's happening. Sorry.
I was going to say one comment on these Tempest tests too. This is one of the ones that has the fairly annoying behavior that if it fails, it just runs until it times out rather than actually stopping when it fails. And I put up some patches, it must have been like a couple years ago at this point, to Tempest to try to address this, and I don't recall whatever happened, but I'm pretty sure they didn't ever merge what I posted. But there's a thing that's kind of irritating that makes a lot of these errors look similar at a basic level in Tempest logs, because what happens is rather than noticing, oh, volume X has gone into an error state, they just continue to look for it to go into available and then eventually say, oh, it's been 10 minutes and it never went to available. So
okay.
The jobs run a lot longer than they should, and they fail with like vague messages that don't really tell you what actually happened. And it would be great for chasing these if we could clean up some of that stuff. This was one of the attempts I made at fixing one of those. I just put in the chat here.
Okay.
So not very useful for the root problem, but there's a whole bunch of tests that really should be improved so they at least fail in like a coherent way.
Also, I wonder if that's related to why the Cinder backup service was disabled. Cinder full or Tempest full jobs. Paste the link in there.
Okay. So on related issue, I don't know if you saw Sophia's note to the mailing list that our outreach intern was approved, which was kind of news to me. I thought that had already happened. But anyway, so we do have someone, and her particular focus for it's a short period, it's a couple of months maybe, is to add more tests to the Cinder Tempest plugin. So it's slightly different from this, but anyway, we'll have somebody around who's digging into working with Tempest tests and implementing new tests. So maybe we can either divert her to this or just take that as we do have testing type activities going on, which is always good. Okay. Oh, Sophia, hi.
Yes. Hi. Yes, there is maybe I have to add it to the other part. There is a link in the Launchpad for create new test scenarios. So maybe feel free to add scenarios so Anastasia could work and create them.
All right, thanks. Yeah, we should. Let's put this on the agenda for the next Cinder meeting, which will be not today, but a week from today, and to make everybody aware of how we want to record these.
Okay.
Yeah, and thanks to you for being willing to mentor somebody. That's a lot of help. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Thanks.
If I can say something, yeah, that's a really good news. And you may have seen that also one of my QE colleagues is trying to send some tests, but you may have noticed a patch on Cinder Tempest plugin, but then the QE PTL says that, well, this test may go to Tempest as well. So if we manage to work properly on that, maybe some of the tests could end up in Tempest properly and not Cinder Tempest plugins. But let's see. I mean, the important thing is to get started with the code, and then finding the proper place is not. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's not so important, but yeah, I mean, once we have the code, it should be easier.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I was looking at that patch earlier. So I think the thing we should do is let's just merge it into the Cinder Tempest plugin because it looks pretty much ready to go right now. And then if Gman wants it in Tempest proper, then he can put up a patch or ask Benny to put up a patch to move it. Does that make sense to you?
Benny already sent the patch to Tempest.
Oh, so, okay.
And there are some comments, so you may want to check those comments as well and comment there as well. So,
okay. I saw so did he abandon the Cinder Tempest plugin patch, or maybe we're talking about different patches?
That's still there.
Okay. So the one that's up for Cinder Tempest plugin, we should just go ahead and review and approve without worrying about it being moved.
I would tend to agree with that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I closed my some reason. I'm pretty sure it's Google Chrome because once I kill that, everything comes back. It completely consumes all resources on my machine at random times. That's what happened at the end of the session last time. And I just get locked out. So I just completely killed all those things. And that's where I had all my stuff open. So I'm sorry I'm not posting a link to the patch I'm talking about right now. But anyway, so I think the thing is, let's all keep an eye on Cinder Tempest plugin patches and move those along because that's good. So we've got Anastasia working on that, and then also some of Luigi's colleagues at Red Hat are being encouraged to push stuff upstream. So, which is always a good thing. So if we can get those things merged so that they don't feel like they're just pushing patches into the void, that would be cool, because it'll encourage them to continue to do things. Any general comments or anything? Okay. All right. Okay, so cycle priorities. All right, this is where I should have had something open and don't. Sorry, I need a second here. So I put an initial set of priorities on the wiki page that summarized what went on in Shanghai. And so we can, actually, let me just paste them in here so then you don't have to look at two different things. Just do. All right. Okay. For some reason, I'm having trouble pasting. There we go. Okay.
Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't know what. Okay. All right. So I guess let's just run through this, and then we can probably make things a bit more specific. And there may be things that I haven't included that we should have. So one priority is increasing testing coverage. So we've got, I'm spelling her name wrong, so I'll have to look this up. So anyone who wants to also do this, please feel free. But I guess mainly our the role for each of us in this is to keep an eye out for her patches and review them. So as an intern, Sophia is helping to mentor her. You could see from her first couple of patches, they were a little raw. So she'll need a little help just sort of moving along and, getting mentored. So fast reviews are good. And I need to include myself in this notice that I need to pay attention to her stuff and review. So I think it'll be important to get some, constructive, helpful reviews early so she learns, her way around and how to get stuff done. And then that'll help her speed to move things along. And also, we only have her for a couple of months. So, right, the faster we review, the more stuff she'll be able to actually get done. Okay, now the next one is sort of a, not a pipe dream, but right, it's something we'd like to have happen. So with the increasing the number of CIs that are running the Cinder Tempest plugin, we do want to have that. I think technically they're supposed to do it. I think we may have talked about that at the last meeting. I don't want to drop the hammer on people because, Jay's experience and during train, right? Just getting everybody updated to Python 3 there was incredible hardship and pain, and some people just dropped out rather than do it. Oh, good. Luigi, you already have some updates. Cool.
So
okay.
I posted the link to the meeting that was like 1 hour ago.
Oh,
and
thanks.
they basically, I was like multitasking.
Yeah.
And the idea is that basically the quick start guide from Software Factory should be able to set up something which should work.
Okay.
Then there is some additional configuration to like configure node pool, but there is the documentation should already cover that. And the complicated part is the integration as third-party CI, but there is already some information there. And anyway, the idea, as you can read from the logs, is that they are supportive of this. So we can try to set up something as like initial point of contact, the initial documentation, but then try to point to the official documentation and ask them for more details whenever it's needed. I'm not sure where our role finishes and their role starts, but yeah, anyway, it's a possibility and it should kind of work.
Okay. Yeah, so our hope is that if we can get some kind of consistent basis for people to use for their third-party CIs, then it'll make things easier for everybody, which sounds reasonable. So we'll see how this goes. So, yeah, so basically, yeah, I guess I don't have anything to say about that. So we want to encourage this to happen. So we'll work on this during the cycle. All right, now as far as like Cinder specific things, so no, Gorka and Rajat are working on wanting to make the volume types more, I guess, local is one way to say this. But there's a lot of demand to have, so they're working on the spec for this. So that's something that'll be a priority. Yvonne's working on the generic backup stuff. So we want to encourage that. Now they improve the HA active documentation. I mean, basically the idea is we want to make it easier for people to be able to test this and be able to claim that they're supporting active.
Are we talking about documenting this for driver developers or for deployers?
Well, I guess it's both, right? Because right, this is one of those things you have to turn on a flag in your driver in order for Cinder to recognize that you're doing active. I'm pretty sure I'm not confusing this with something else. And I think at least one driver is currently claiming in the support matrix that they support active, but they don't actually have it turned on in their driver. So it would mean that they probably haven't tested it because it wouldn't work.
Well, they haven't,
so anyway,
the Cinder volume service wouldn't even start.
Right. So that's yeah. Anyway, so
at the moment RBD has this flag and it's the only one.
Yeah. And then Eric's point was,
well, I guess I don't know. We've talked around this in circles for a while. I don't know what we need to do to help driver developers along with this. I don't know if the problem is just that nobody cares about this, or if they actually don't know how to do it, or I'm not really sure what the current state of that is.
Right, and this is interesting because the NetApp team had the request. They were going to try to do something by reloadable configs, and I think Gorka pretty much convinced everybody that actually what they want is active-active. So
Yep.
I think you may be working on that during this cycle to make the NetApp drivers be able to support active-active. So
Exactly.
all right. So and Gorka did volunteer, and I noticed he's in the Cinder. And I don't know if he's joined this.
Yep, I just
Hi,
joined.
Gorka. Yeah. Well, welcome.
Sorry for
Welcome back.
arriving late.
That's okay. Gorka was at KubeCon all last week, so he's been. I think Sean, you were there too. Right. So anyway, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gorka volunteered to help answer questions as they come up for the NetApp team to implement active-active in their driver. So I guess
Yeah, and the idea was to update our docs to provide some guide to at least a way to deploy this, even if it's with triple O or something like that, a way to actually have like what changes that you need to make to the driver, at least to test it and to deploy it easily, because it's one of the problems that people have to do a deployment. So that's something I have to work on, to write something and update the docs for that.
okay. All right. And then I'm thinking the NetApp guys who are working on this can help you in that regard by pointing out where documents need to happen. So, okay.
Yeah. Currently, we are trying to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Currently, we are trying to set up environment for starting test our driver against an active-active configuration. So, you know, we are not like we would like to know which tests we maybe should perform. You know, like there is not a exact solution for that, but you know, like we need to verify if our driver is able to if we can add support to we can like set up the flag to support the active. But you know, like there is no we are kind of lost. You know, we don't know what we exactly need to do in order to like maybe convince the community we are able to support it. You know, like when I don't know if which tests we should perform, if we should like have a base a deployment we could like use for the validation, if we could have a deployment. If you have a DOM configured and you have like one node for something, one node for the manager stuff, for the schedulers, then you could have like one or like two or three volumes running on different nodes. So you know, it's just kind of like stuff we could like discuss to document, and I'm pretty sure we can help because we are working on that. So this is it.
Yeah, in theory, you would want 3 APIs, 3 schedulers, and three, not necessarily 3, but at least 2 of each of the services. Otherwise, one of your services is not active.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
usually most people deploy 3 APIs, 3 schedulers, and currently only 1 volume. So the change would be, instead of just running 1 volume service and make it active passive, you could also run 3 volume services, or 2 if you want just to do 2. But that could be the normal active setup.
Okay. Okay.
think I should unmute myself. Okay. Yeah, so I think, what am I trying to say? Yeah, so this looks, so the priority from the general Cinder team is to, right, get the generic kind of documentation set up so that anyone can do this. But the since the NetApp team is actually interested in doing this during the cycle, we can sort of combine those two things. So this seems to be a good way to handle this. But let me put a note.
Can we touch more on the validation tests part of this?
Sure.
I mean, this seems to be one of the common questions is how do I test to make sure active-active works? But there's not really, you can't go run a Tempest test that will tell you this, right? So, I think it's more about understanding what the requirements are and picking through the code and the driver and making sure that it's at least designed in a way where this should work would be the first step. I'm hoping I can goad Gorka into telling us more about this. But everyone kind of wants I want to run a script and know if it works kind of thing, but I don't think that's really viable anytime soon for this feature. So Gorka, did you want to provide any thoughts on how to take a pass at testing a driver and figuring out if this works or not?
Well, like you said, it's not easy. First of all, it is so driver dependent that it's hard to tell. For example, for the RPD driver, the initialize and terminate connections are trivial. It basically doesn't have to do anything with the backend. So there's not going to be any race conditions there. But for any other backend, that is a very likely source of problems because many of them have to create host entities in the backend where they associate the iSCSI initiator name or the HBAs for fiber channel, whatever. And they only want to have one of those for each Nova host. So they usually have logs around that, but they have to verify that they have changed them to use the DLM and that everything works correctly. So it is difficult to say, yeah, you have to be able to do this or that. In most cases, you have to be able to support multiple attaches from the same host concurrently, multiple attaches and detaches concurrently. One that, because you could be having one detach that it's removing something and the attach needs it. So you could be missing a lock in there. So it's.
And so, yeah, so one of the patterns that I kind of observe around this is people ask us, what do I need to do with my driver to figure this out? And the answer is kind of always, well, you're the only one that knows how your driver works, and you have to think through these kinds of issues around race conditions that are be more easily hit, and what happens if a node fails halfway through some operation? Does it do stuff where it can get cleaned up? It's fundamentally difficult stuff, and there's not going to be any kind of automated test in the foreseeable future that's really going to give a lot of confidence on I don't have any HA bugs. So it's, manual testing of this stuff is great if you can figure out clever ways to do it. Definitely want to do that. But this is a bit more involved of a feature than I passed some Tempest tests, really is kind of the point I want to get across here.
But can't we have at least some tests which can say that something is not working properly as it should be? We cannot be totally sure, as you said, that things are working totally, without bugs, but at least we can have like some kind of acceptance testing that says, yes, this is for sure not working because it's breaking here in this easy case. If I understand it correctly, there are things which are really driver dependent, like the way you disconnect the driver and make sure that things are still working. But that could be some generic test that could be fed to the third-party CI. I think it's still possible to have it in Zool. So it's not just having like the Python code, but like running something, destroying something, rerunning the test, ensuring that everything is working should at least say something, I think.
Yeah, even as a base level of comfort, just having a job that spins up multiple APIs and schedulers that someone could run in third-party CI and just run Tempest, even if there's not a test specifically meant to test the concurrency. Just something that runs when there are HA services present, and making sure that there's not something that just blows up would be at least a base. We need more than that to really know that there's not an issue, but just knowing that things don't blow up is useful.
Yeah, I think that's the case that Luigi was describing. Everything blows. Yeah, your driver is not working as it should. If it cannot even, like you're saying, Sean, if it cannot even run Tempest successfully when deployed in active-active. If it fails there, yeah, it's broken. Yeah, that's something that I have no experience with the multi-node deployment. Does anybody, Luigi, do you have any experience with the multi-node jobs in the CI?
I did something for Sahara way back, so it's not extremely difficult. For basic things, DevStack is fine. If it's just a matter of setting up a few configuration variables in Cinder conf, that should be doable easily.
Yeah, that's basically what we would need, because I think DevStack is already deploying the DLM with etcd, so that could be already done, and we would only need to change the cluster configuration and make sure that it is deployed, the volume service in the other nodes. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we probably could add this to the Ceph backend, because LVM is not good, but because you don't have the backend accessible from all the nodes. But for Ceph, this should be doable, right?
Yeah, and NFS as well, maybe.
If the driver supports active-active, yes.
Okay, so it
There's
sounds
probably
like
some tricky stuff to sort out with the NFS driver and active-active. It's probably worth taking a look at that, but I don't know how that's going to play with the assisted Nova snapshot stuff. Seems like it might throw a wrench into some of that. Probably worth looking at it though.
okay, so our situation is, since Ceph does support this, it's possible we could put together a scenario test that would work for Ceph. And then that could be the basis for other drivers. Although, as Gorka pointed out earlier, right, Ceph has some things that make some things really easy for this. Okay. So I guess the question. Well, I don't know if this is a question or just a statement, right? This does seem to be something that is worth pursuing to get things moving along, because I think, right, everybody wants HA. So it's, if we can get this. So everything we can do to assist this in happening for the drivers is good, is my point of view. I guess that's a pretty vague statement, but that's the way it goes. So I don't know if we can. All right. So I guess I don't know that we have to set particular action items right this minute. But I think this as a cycle priority to make these things move along seems like something we should do. Okay. Then the last two things on the list, right? Remove the V2 API. I guess I would qualify that. But I think, yeah, so I think removing the V2 API is important, at least from the standpoint of, right, something that came up at the mid-cycle was, what about the Cinder V4 API? Which I think the point of having the V4 API is that we can sort of declare, it's got something to do with the microversions. I'm not sure I completely understand it, but the basic idea is we can declare like a bottom. We can remove some microversions that we don't want to support anymore, and then we say we're starting with V4 with a certain level of support.
Yeah, that was the discussion last time in Vancouver, because one of the drawbacks that people raised is, you can add a microversion that removes an API, but you can't ever actually remove that code because they can still use a lower microversion that expects it to be there. And then also people talking about, well, we're just adding more and more microversions, and eventually we're going to have, thousands of microversions. So what is the long-term goal in how this should work? And that was kind of the agreement, I think, at least my takeaway from that session was that when we get to a certain point where the API has evolved through adding these microversions and you have things that you want to get rid of, the way that a project can handle that is by introducing a new API major version and kind of cutting the line there at the highest microversion and saying, okay, whatever Cinder v3.950 is, that is now the base of v4, and we're able to, once we can remove v3, we can clean out all of that backward compatibility code for the lower microversions. So, okay. Just some background.
Yeah, no, so that seems like a long-term thing, but it would be good to have V2 out of the way so we can concentrate on those two things. I think we don't want to have more than 2 APIs running at a time that we're trying to support. Is probably a good thing. Okay.
Yeah, we had 3 for quite a while, and it was nice to get rid of V1.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. And then removing the Python 2 support, that's a community goal, and it looks like we're pretty good shape there. So
I have a question because we kind of went through the CI thing. So I commented on the third-party CI, but about having the third-party CIs running Cinder Tempest plugin, maybe you said that, but what is the way? Like just telling them, please run this, or kind of enforcing it, or is there a way to enforce it? Or
well, the enforcement thing is that we're supposed to check to see if they're running it or not. And if they're not, we ask them to run it. And if it's not running, then we mark their driver as unsupported in that release. And then if you're unsupported in a release, you're subject to removal in the next release, which is kind of a drastic thing. So I guess it's one of these things where, right, we want them to do it, but if it's not, it should be relatively easy to do it. But I guess I personally am kind of don't want to push it too hard if it's right. I don't know. On the one hand, right, if the vendors aren't willing to do it, then right, that's bad. But on the other hand, I don't want to be pushing drivers out. Let me put it this way, right? If we've got an easy way for them to be deploying their CIs so that that stuff can be running, then it seems reasonable to say, okay, you should be doing, X, Y, and Z, right? But in the current situation, at least what we found, asking them to run everything in Python 3.7, it was difficult for a lot of vendors to make that happen.
Well, the Python 3 stuff requires like a whole infrastructure upgrade, and my impression is that if you want to run the Cinder Tempest plugin, you really just have to change a couple of lines of configuration, and it will just run with what you've already got.
Right.
So it should be a lot less work than the Python 3 stuff, I would hope.
Right.
And I would also, not that it's terribly useful, but I would be really concerned if vendors find it too onerous to run the Cinder Tempest plugin. I don't know what they're going to do whenever people report bugs in their driver and have problems when stuff breaks, because it's a fairly minimal exercise just to run a few additional Tempest tests. And I would think anybody that actually has a driver that they intend to support in any way could probably manage to do that.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it should be just a matter of adding a pip install Cinder Tempest plugin from Git and changing the regular expression.
Yeah. All right, so I guess maybe the thing to do is I should take this as an action item to just look at, right, the current third-party CIs and see who's running it and who isn't. And then we just take it from there. So it could start with a gentle reminder, hey, you should be running this also, and just see where that gets us. All right. Okay, so
I need to drop off.
Okay.
I've had another conflict come up, so if there's anything that needs my attention afterwards, let me know.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Jay.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks. Yay.
Yep. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
All right, so I guess at this point,
Yeah.
I just should ask, is there anything that we want to do that's not in this list as a priority? Okay.
I would still like to see us switch away from SQL Alchemy migrate to Alembic.
Right.
Since that is deprecated and the maintainer has indicated that he doesn't really want to keep maintaining SQL Alchemy migrate. But at the same time, I can't volunteer to do anything there, even though I had volunteered to do it last time.
Right. So it's possible that it's a well-contained enough thing that I think an intern could do it. And
Yeah,
we're
really.
actually advertising for somebody. So it's possible that Red Hat will have an intern who can work on this. But I don't know yet. But let me add that as a yeah. So if somebody comes along and wants to work on it, we should all support them in whatever way we possibly can. Okay. Yeah, I think the importance of having that on the list is that, yes, this is a very important thing because suddenly it's going to have to happen. And it would be better to have it done before that becomes the case because it is getting closer. Okay. So yeah, so I'll talk to my manager about where we're standing with that. I reviewed a bunch of resumes and you know, gave him some input about people who looked like, yeah, let's try to follow up. So I guess that'll be my action item then. Okay. All right. Great. And as far as like review strength, I think I either said this or typed this somewhere. So we're basically at the same strength we were with active core reviewers that we were for train. And we were able to like get through train. So that's good. But I'm not averse to adding more core reviewers. So I think as far as current cores, if you see someone who you think would be good, we can try to mentor them to get them with a broader breadth of experience. And if there are people out there who do want to, right, their management sees them being a Cinder core as a valuable thing, then, you know, you can reach out to me or to other cores and we can sort of mentor you along. So I guess I just said that. So that's what I'm saying. So, right. So the point is, right. So if you see somebody who you think would be a good core, let's move them along. And if somebody out there is self-motivated and right wants to, so the reason I'm bringing up the manager is right. Part of the core's responsibility is you got to review a lot of stuff that's not directly relevant to your particular company. And some managers need help seeing whether that's a good thing or not. So we'll do what we can to help you out there. So anyway, so that's all I can say, I guess. Okay. Anything else for cycle priorities? Sounds like we've got everything sorted together. All right, cool. So last thing on here is the virtual mid-cycle. Oops, let me scroll. So we talked at the PTG that we'd like to do a mid-cycle. They seem to be valuable. The problem in the past has been it's been really convenient for me, Eric, and Jay to meet in Raleigh, and not so much for everybody else. And much as I'd like to do face-to-face, I think we should do a virtual thing again. So we don't have to. Well, I guess so. The first thing that we do need a answer to is just, would it be worthwhile having a mid-cycle, and then when would we want to do it? And then we can figure out the logistics. Let me back up. All right, so I would like to do a mid-cycle. I think it's definitely worth doing. So we should set a date. We'll do it virtually again because getting people together physically is turning out to be a problem. And I think I'm willing to listen to other experiences on this, but my feeling is that when we're having the mid-cycle in a room where there's 5 or 7 people, and then people try to join remotely, it doesn't work as well as us all being remotely joining. I just think when I've tried to do that, it's a horrible experience because you can't really participate and you can't really see what's going on and you can't really hear things well. But I could be subject to correction. I think I could talk Jay into us using Lenovo again in Raleigh if we want to do something. But it's anyway, so let me throw that out there. But I think my preference personally is to do a virtual mid-cycle like this, where we're all joining remotely. So if anybody feels strongly otherwise, feel free to speak up. But okay, so I think we should plan to do a virtual one. I guess so. The first milestone is in 2 weeks, so we don't want to do it around that. When's milestone 2? Is February 13th. So that's probably shortly after that would be a good time to do this. I guess the advantage of doing it virtually, though, is that we can be a little more spontaneous about saying, let's do it now, because we don't have to get facilities or anything lined up. But I'm thinking sometime around U2 would be roughly midway through. And then the point of doing the mid-cycle is we can see each other on video, which is always very pleasant, but also just to sort of see where we are with cycle priorities and to make, reallocate things or take on stuff as it happens. So I'm just doing a lot of talking. All right, let me start typing stuff in the Etherpad, and then we can revise it. All right, so first thing, yes, we should do one. B. So I think milestone 2 is what, February 13th or something? What did I just say? Yeah, it is.
On the other hand, we could do it earlier. It's a 30-week cycle, okay. And coincidentally, at the 15-week mark, which is the end of January, is when our Cinder spec freeze is.
Okay.
Maybe value having it at or right before the spec freeze, just in case there's any final issues we need to hash out.
That seems.
It's soon. It's coming up really quick. So I don't know. Just not really advocating for that, just pointing out that that would be a useful point as well.
So that's okay. I mean, I could do a poll about when people think it would be good, or we could just, I mean, my feeling is for a virtual mid-cycle, we don't need to give a lot of advance notice. So we could see how things are. So we could say, we could decide now, we'll either do it around spec freeze or right after milestone 2 and see what makes sense as things are happening.
Well, I'm kind of wondering about the format in general. I mean, the in-person mid-cycle, when it involves travel, makes sense to have it as like a multiple day affair. I'm wondering if we're going to do a fully virtual online one, if it wouldn't make more sense to do a handful of smaller scale ones rather than trying to do 2 straight days or whatever of a big one.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, because we could do one around
it might
spec
make
freeze, yeah, and do another spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, even having this on 2 separate days is kind of useful. That it's just a little time commitment, and it's not you don't have to block out everything for it. So spreading things out actually seems to work really well.
All right, that's a good point then. So we could do, all right, so maybe instead of doing one, we should do several. So the 2 hours seems to be pretty good. I mean, like we've still got 10 minutes to go today. So I think that the 2 hours is a good length. All right, so then yeah. Okay, so it looks like, so it'd be good to do something around the time of spec freeze to answer, or maybe shortly before, which would put us, about a month from now. All right, so let's say, all right, so maybe around spec freeze after M2, and then Sean, do you know off the top of your head how much time there is between M3 and RC time? Is it just a couple of weeks, or is it a little bit longer?
Yeah, it's usually just a few weeks. Milestone 3 is April 9th. RC is April 23rd, so we have 2 weeks.
Okay. All right, so maybe around. So feature freeze is roughly M3, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I guess we could do it, right? If stuff is missed, we could consider feature freeze exceptions.
Yeah, we have spec freeze on week 15, and then you actually had added on the schedule a cinder new features.
Can everybody hear Sean?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was just me. Okay.
This mic
right.
is weird. It's I can move it just like a couple centimeters and it doesn't pick up anything.
Okay.
I was just saying that week of March 16th we have on the schedule Cinder new feature status checkpoint. So
Okay.
I don't know. That's another interesting point in the schedule that maybe we want to have some kind of focus there to make sure that we actually are hitting new features and that they're available. Because the interesting part about that is the week before milestone 3 is when the non-client library freezes, so anything to OS Brick. So I don't know if we have any new proposed features that would require any library changes like that, but good to know at that point if things are on track or not.
Okay. Let me, yeah, I forgot I added those things too. So there's a link to the schedule. If I just put it in the Etherpad. Sorry, I should say where. Okay. So we've got our spec freeze right at the end of January. And that's, I don't know if, so Sean, what have you done in the past about like promoting, how do we communicate to potential people who want to do a driver that the new driver freeze or the merge deadline is like a particular date? Do we just put something on the general OpenStack mailing list saying, hey, be aware?
Yeah, I think the 3 things that we've done is we put it on the overall release schedule, which you have on there, new driver deadline. We have announced to the mailing list, and then I don't know if we've been doing it lately, but I know I used to update on the Cinder wiki page. We have the section about contributing a driver.
Okay.
And we would usually, if we remembered, which I think we usually did, we would update that page to state when the deadline was for the current cycle.
Okay. All right, I'll do that then. So
yeah, we have on there. Oh, I guess this is good. Looks like Jay, instead of having to remember to do that every time, updated the wording to say,
check the release
driver
schedule.
Deadline, go to the release schedule. So
okay, so we're sort of covered with that. All right,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, that's good. Then we don't have to remember to update multiple places.
So I'll get something out to the mailing list just as a general thing, just so people are aware. Okay, so we got the spec freeze at R15. And then, so at R8, I've got this feature status checkpoint. Oh, okay. It's just as a reminder to people.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, because the thing about Cinder seems to be much better organized than Glance was. So the thing I'd have with Glance is that we'd have features coming in, and everyone would be focused on getting it into the API by the feature freeze, and then suddenly it's like, whoops, we forgot about the client. And
we've done the same in Cinder, so it's not just Glance.
So it's okay. So that's really the point of the status checkpoint, was to have something there so people who are implementing a feature do keep that in mind. Now you're right. So Sean, as you mentioned, I don't know that anything we're doing this time really seems to be mostly back end type stuff that's not going to require any client library changes. And then Cinderlib is always trailing. So that's subject to different deadlines. Okay.
Oh, that
all right. So I think
we need to do the train release of Cinderlib.
Cinderlib, yeah. Gorka's on the call still, so we can maybe grab him before he leaves to talk about that. And let's see. Okay, so I think this is good to do it in multiple. So we'll have it 2 hours seems to be a decent length where it's long enough to get stuff done. And we don't, if we don't have enough for 2 hours, we'll just quit. So that's fine too. And then so the question, so it looks like around spec freeze would be good, and then maybe around this new feature checkpoint would be a good time to do it. So that's at R8. So my math is correct. That would be roughly 7 weeks after the spec freeze. And then maybe we can have an emergency one right around just before RC time when we're frantically trying to get stuff reviewed. So let's tentatively say we'll aim to do 2. So around spec freeze and then around okay. Let me I'll look at the schedule on the actual calendar later and try to come up with something more specific about these. And then and I guess all right, so that's good. So we'll aim to do 2, possibly 3. The idea is 2 hours, it's virtual. And then I think using the meeting time is probably a good, because most people have that blocked off, so then you just need to find an hour. I'm thinking maybe do the same thing here where it's like the hour before, but we could do a poll or something. Or I can just propose this at our next meeting and see if anybody screams or has an objection. Okay. Any general observations or anything? And then is Gorka still here, or did he? Yeah, he's
I'm
showing
here.
up in there.
Yep.
Hey, Gorka.
Yep.
Hey, we need to talk at some point about the train release for Cinderlib.
Yep. There are, I think, 2 or 3 patches upstream pending merge, and I was working right now in a bug fix for configuration from more complex configuration options.
Okay.
So I am hoping I will have it up today, and I think with those patches, it should be all that needs to be merged for this release.
Because what's the deadline, Sean? Is it like 6 weeks after the?
I think it's 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
3.
So then
3.
All right. So we're definitely on target for that. That's good. Okay. So I guess the main point here is for the cores not to forget about Cinderlib when they're looking for stuff to review. So
as soon as I submit this patch and it gets the CI results, I will start nagging everyone so they won't forget.
All right. Thank you, Gorka. That sounds good. All right. Cool. So then
Thanks.
we're all set with that. Okay. All right. Any thanks everybody for attending. Any final inspirational words anyone would like to share?
We never seem to have enough of it, but if anyone has time to actually review the Cinder specs, there's a few of them out there, and it seems like that's always something that just sits there until someone really pushes on something. So.
Okay. All right. So let's. Ooh, I'm over time. So I was going to say we could use our. Last time I looked at the clock, it was. Oh no, I'm not. My clock is fast. Okay, we got 30 seconds. All right. So I will end now, and you've got 30 seconds to go review. All right, everybody, keep in mind the Cinder specs need to be looked at, and I need to. We've got some of our priorities are associated with specs. So like the default volume type one, or not the. I don't know how exactly were we describing that feature. Better volume types. How about that? that's not how we're calling it. But anyway, the better volume type spec, please take a look at that. That's one of our priorities. And then anything else that showed up there to move along. All right, great. Thanks everybody for coming. I think this was pretty productive for me anyway, so hopefully for you too. For people in the US and elsewhere who celebrate Thanksgiving tomorrow, happy Thanksgiving. And to people who don't, happy Thanksgiving anyway. And enjoy the rest of your weeks. Probably USA people aren't going to be around tomorrow or Friday, so you won't see us. And I'll talk to Jay later. What we've done in the past when we've used Blue Jeans is he's taken the recordings and uploaded them to the Cinder YouTube channel. So we'll get the Shanghai PTG ones up and then these up also. But since you were here, you don't really care about the recordings, I can't imagine. But anyway, all right. Well, thanks everybody. And don't forget, the next Cinder meeting is happening 2 hours earlier than it used to. So be aware of that. And it's in OpenStack Meeting 4, not OpenStack Meeting. If you go to OpenStack Meeting, you'll be in a Neutron thing, which nobody wants to do that. Anyway, happy Thanksgiving and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brian.
Right.